Nerdish, nerdy, nerd news.
Hey everyone, it's Jess. I'm sort of doing this one without Fergal and Christian this time. I'm just going to be talking. You're going to hear my dulcet tones for the next little bit here. It was really interesting. I've recently had the opportunity to apply for a different position where I work. I didn't get it, unfortunately. However, just the experience was really fantastic. The things that I had to do and I had to think of and sort of twist my brain into new ways was really, it helped a lot for some of the things I have to deal with in my job, but it also opened up my point of view for other things. So one of the things I had to do for this interview was I had to create a presentation and talk about what a high performance workforce is and how to create one or build one. And I'll tell you, it was really intense. This was a lot of reading. It was something that was really out of my wheelhouse. You know, I'm a techie. I'm a guy that likes to work with equipment and software and computers and technology. And when you start talking about people, the squishy parts, they're not the same. So it's just really interesting. So I'm just going to go through what this presentation was. I'm not going to do the presentation. I'm going to talk about it because you're not there for me to look at and point at and have the back and forth with. So we'll just wing it here. The first thing really is to explain. Most people they're nodding their heads. Oh yeah, high performance workforce. Yeah, we hear that term bandied around all the time. It's one of those things that companies like to use. It's and it is important. There is such a thing. It's not just one of those corporate speak like synergism and those type of words that everyone hates to hear. A high performance workforce is an actual thing. It really is. What it is it's a team that is collectively better than the average workforce. And what they mean by that is that if you have a team of people, separately they're good. But together, when they're working together, they are like the wonder team. They're the ones that they just work. You don't have to constantly be, the leader just is there to make sure that things are flowing. They're the one that sort of drives it. The managing isn't as much management as for other teams that aren't high performance because they just work well together and they have no problems. It's sort of like the whole is better than just the parts. But we'll get into this a little bit more here. So yeah, there's several parts to a high performance workforce. There's like 6 or 7 of them, main points. I'm going to touch on sort of each one of them. Not going to read this word for word. I'm not going to put this presentation up for available just because there is some stuff for the company I work on it that's kind of proprietary. So we'll just leave it at that. But you can listen to me and nod your head along with what I'm saying, hopefully. So yeah, those 7 pieces, they come in, everyone's going to know what these are. They're all things that everyone have, oh yeah, I know what that is. And yeah, I agree. It's that you'll definitely going to be nodding your head. I'm just hoping that as we get into each point, I'll open up some of those things and you'll go, oh, well, I never thought of it that way. So the first one is really clear communication. Super important. Making sure you're communicating. And I don't just mean from management or leaders to team. I mean like amongst everyone. Talking about leadership, that's also very important. You can have a high performance workforce that's going in different directions and now they aren't doing anything. So you really need to have that strong leadership. Again, this is another one that's super important. Trust and collaboration. If you don't have that trust, if the leaders don't have the trust of the team and the team doesn't have the trust of the leaders and you don't have the trust within the team, no one does their best. Collaboration, of course, follows with trust and communication. Accountability. Most people think this is negative. It isn't always negative, and we'll get into that. But it's also important. You have to be accountable for, everyone's accountable for the various parts that they need to do. Diversity is all part of this entire thing, and we'll get into a little bit of that. It's really difficult concept to like how does diversity make a high performance workforce a good functioning team, but we'll see that. Continuous learning and improvement. That's also really important. You can have a high performance workforce, but if they don't continuously learning, getting new training, improving themselves, and the leaders aren't getting their new skills and things like that, you're just going to become stagnant, and you're no longer going to be that high performance workforce, because that really is what drives that sort of building new innovation within the team. And of course, you need to have results orientated approaches. That's a fancy term for goals that are achievable, but you're reaching for those goals. So all these things are parts of the high performance workforce. Now, a high performance workforce isn't something that you go, all right, in 8 months, we're going to have a high performance workforce, and that's our goal. That's not the way it works. A high performance workforce has ebb and flow. It goes up and down. You'll have times when they're super functioning, they're great, they're doing awesome. And then you'll have down times. You'll have times when they'll come down. It's sort of like in a sports team. You'll have a rebuilding period, or you'll have a period where people are just sort of, they're coasting a little bit because they're not interested in something, or this is where you need to work on it, right? You have to constantly work on these characteristics and all these things to keep that high functioning, high performance workforce. But they do have an ebb and flow. Now, during all of this, what I'm saying here may not necessarily work for your group. Everybody has their own sort of dynamic. Every group is different. Every management style is different. And you have to sort of change or adjust your management style and work with that management style towards these different things. What works for one person in one group may not work for another. So just keep that in mind as we're going forth. Anything that I say here, you might say, oh, that'll never work for my guys, or yeah, okay, it might not. But try to think of how you could maybe adjust that, or how you would need to, sort of pivot on that to make or help that work for your team. So let's start off with that leadership. Now, I've said leaders and managers, and most people, they don't know the difference. There is a difference. You can have, here's a very important thing, all right? You can have a leader who isn't a manager. You cannot have a manager who isn't a leader. Now, there are some people who say, yes, you can. And I say that those are not high-functioning workforces. It is just one of those intrinsic things that if you're a manager, you also have to be one of the leaders. Now, a leader is the type of person, and again, it doesn't have to be the manager, but the manager should be one of those leaders. They're the ones that provide directions. They enforce accountability. They cultivate the team culture. They make sure that we're maintaining our goals, and all of the team members understand what's happening, what we need to do if we're missing them. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean, maybe we have to change our goal slightly, or maybe we have a bit of, okay, this isn't going to be reached, but you know what? We can change this and we can reach this other goal instead, and then come back to this one. So you always have to be that guy that's sort of not managing, leading the team. You're reinforcing those positive interactions, the ones that you see like, okay, that's really effective. We need to keep trying to do that. Give an avenue to build on it, right? These are all things. I'm throwing these words out and everyone's going, yeah, well, how do you do that? This is that part that I was just talking about, where everybody has their own sort of method to do it. Now, you always have to be prepared, and I said this, to pivot or adapt your plan. Your objectives might change because that goal that you were trying to achieve is no longer possible in the time frame that you had set. The supplier is late. The vendor can't make that date. Something has come up. One of your team members has a personal thing and they are unavailable for the next 2 days, and they are key to that goal. These are all things that you have to be aware that they're going to happen. They will. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a failure. It just means you need to pivot, take advantage of that situation. All right, we can't finish this goal, but you know what? We have everything lined up to slam dunk this one. And when we're done this one, we can move back to the other one when everything's in place again. And this is what project managers do a lot of. So they are leaders without being the managers in most cases, because they're the one that drives that project forward. And they're the one that watches and pivots and adapts and makes sure, keeps your people on course. I like to say, steer the ship. You're the captain. Keep things on course. And one of the things, no plan survives contact with the customer. That's just the way it works. It's not quite war, but it's pretty close. So Everything can be optimal. Every one of those other things that I've already spoken about a little bit, that I've touched on, could be perfect, optimal. But without good leadership, it won't matter, because you'll have people going in different directions, no one working together. The team will just fall apart. So like I said, if you have a goal, always have another goal ready, or 2 or 3 or 4 different ones that, like, at a moment's notice, or if certain things just fall into place, you can switch to them, because that's what a good leader does. They're like a chess master almost, looking forward, keeping track of the moves, and doing those things. Now, remember I said that you have to be a leader if you're a manager? So people are going to be saying, like, right now, they're going, I don't get the difference. What's the difference between a leader and a manager? They're the same thing. No, a leader is like what I've been talking about. They're the person that provides the direction, they make sure that our goals are right. They provide the communication channels. They're sort of the glue that holds everything together. A manager, now these are like 2 different hats, okay? You can be wearing the same, both of them. You could be a leader and a manager. The manager is the guy that is, or lady, that is maintaining the business needs. Now, but what I mean is, they're the one that's watching the budget, the costs. Is this beneficial for the business? Are we moving in a direction that will benefit the business? Is this what the business wants? Is this what we were told by the upper management to do? Is it what was supposed to be done? Are we maintaining our contractual obligations? All of those things that would otherwise hurt the business or impede the business. That's what the manager is maintaining. Now, the manager is also in charge of personnel and any issues that may arise. They're the ones that work with, if you have an HR department, for any of those types of things. Now, that's the negative part. We don't like talking about those, but they happen. They're going to be there. That's why we have these different departments and different things. So that's the difference. You can be a leader without being a manager. I'm sure everyone out there has been in a team where someone just steps up and they do a fantastic job of making sure everybody's on target. They got the things they need, the information, they coordinate it all, but they're not your manager. They're just someone else on the team that takes that position. Now, you have a manager who oversees all of that with the business sense in mind as well. And that's where I said you also have to be a leader as a manager. You can't just be a manager, because that's just a lot of saying, no, we can't do that. Find a better way, make it cheaper. Because if you're just looking after that without looking after your team, without having those little bits of concessions or other, pivot opportunities that you may find that will benefit the business, even though it's not necessarily 100% in line with a goal, you're not doing a great job as a leader then. So you have to sort of wear 2 hats as a manager. So yeah, let's move on. So a clear communication. I like to say this is one of the top things within a high performance workforce. That is it's actually, I think it is the most important. It's setting clear expectations, making sure everyone has communication channels, actively listening to your team members' inputs, creating some kind of channels. Like those channels, when I say communication channels, those can be toolbox meetings in the morning, 10-minute meeting every morning, so everyone knows exactly what we're doing today. Depending on the type of industry or business that you're in, that might be a toolbox meeting. It might be a morning meeting. You might call it a water cooler meeting, good morning meeting, whatever you want to call it. It's 10 minutes at the start. And it literally could be everyone standing around, getting their coffee at the coffee maker. And you just sort of, okay, hey, what's everyone doing today? You're doing that, you're doing that, you're doing that. Okay, yeah, good. So now everyone knows what direction everyone's going in. Regular team meetings, the big ones, like the ones that everyone hates to do, they're the ones that are an hour long, where everyone sits down and they say, all right, Frank, what are you doing with your goals? How are you? Where are you? And then you go to Alice, and then you go on to Sally, and everyone gets their couple minutes to say, and then the leader himself or herself or the manager, depending on how your team is comprised, gives you more information, maybe that have come down from executive or from vendors. Okay, yeah, the shipping's late, we're going to have to put this one off, or they're going to be here tomorrow, so we need to get this done today, back off of everything else and just do this. That's that regular team meeting. That's what keeps the ship steering in the right direction. Other things that you can do, depending on your industry, is there's a lot of chat apps out there for smartphones, and everyone has a smartphone now. Like there's WhatsApp, there's Telegram, there's, I don't know, I can say 1,000 of them. I'm not endorsing any one of them. I'm just saying there's 1,000 of them. Some people who have businesses have their own internal chats. You maybe are using Microsoft Office with Teams or whatever else. But a non-formal type chat that everybody on your team is in, where stuff can be just thrown out and say, hey, does anyone know about this? Has anyone come across this? Who's dealing with this? An example would be in the industry I work in telecom, we have a lot of technicians that are out in the field, and they have their own little sort of, some places, I don't know exactly where, but I do know that Christian, the group that he's with, they do have their own little chat channel. And so they'll go into a building and they're trying to do an install for high speed or something like that for internet or TV service or whatever it is they're doing. And they can't find something in this building. So they'll throw it in this chat room. Hey, does anyone know where this is at this address? And someone else who maybe just dealt with that a couple weeks ago goes, oh yeah, I was there. Go to this door, look behind the conduit there, and it's up in the corner. So now what's happened is you've saved a lot of time because they're communicating in a non-formal way, just passing that information as needed. Or has anyone ever come across this? All these different questions, little informal things, right? It's a wonderful thing. Now, the manager and leader can be a part of that channel, or you could have a separate channel that they're not in. It all depends on how informal your business or industry is and how much you want to control that. That's all up to you as your a part of your management style. Another thing that's important is those informal one-on-ones with your team members. You have those coffee breaks. You have those times when you're in the office, say you're just arriving and you see them, they just came in the door and they're knocking the snow off their boots or something like that. And you can say, oh, hey, Sally, I heard your kid was at a baseball event, how do you do? Or these little things, because these are things that you'll know when you have regular communication and you're part of the team. Just these little things. And that gives them the chance to communicate with you on a personal level. And it opens up an avenue for them to feel a lot more comfortable to bring up something that maybe they don't want to bring up in a group of people. And I don't mean personal things. I mean like things that their work is involved with. They might say, hey, I'm having a lot of problem with George. He's not meeting his goal. Or he gave me something wrong and I've asked him for another one and he's working on something else now and I really need this other thing. It gives that leader and that manager the ability to understand where the problems are and maybe correct them or facilitate a solution. So you really want to set aside about 20% of your, not 20% of your time, 20% of your, if you had, say, 20 team members, you want to set aside enough time for those informal one-on-ones for about 20% of them every week. So that would be like 4 members per week. You make the time to, even if it's a site visit or you stop by their desk and say, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Or you see them at the water cooler and the coffee, in the hallway, heading out to lunch or coming back from lunch, whatever, right? Just that little couple minutes. Open door policies is another great way of having that sort of informal one-on-ones. You just say to anybody, hey, if you need to talk to me, my door's open, come on in. Again, it all depends on your management style. So the little miscommunication errors can cause team members to work at opposites, which, we've already talked about. One person thinks they're supposed to be doing this, the other person thinks they're supposed to be doing that, but it's actually a different thing that they need to be doing. And this loss of time and the resource time, and it has a really heavy impact because now those 2 team members are going like, oh, I put all that work into doing that, and the other guy was doing that other thing, and now we both have to do it all again. And it just is demoralizing, and it's annoying, and it makes the team feel like no one listens to them because they weren't told what's going on. That's what all this communication channels really help with, right? Another thing, one of the things I've noticed throughout my careers is that different people that grow up in different generations, they react differently to how you talk to them. So I'm going to use some examples here that I have personally experienced. Now, I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that this is everybody, but I've just noticed that as a general rule, this is what I've found. Baby boomers, when they're doing their job, these are the people that are close to retirement right now in this day and age. They're close to retirement. They've been doing a job. This might be their job that they've been doing since they started. We had a gentleman who just a little while ago, it was a few years ago now, he was with the company I was with for 50 years. 50 years. And he retired from that. It was the job he got when he was 17, and he retired when he was, whatever, 65 or something like that. So, but it was 50 years, right? He had that job for 50 years. And the way that his reactions were to praise, if you went up and you said, good job, and you said that, maybe a couple times, once or twice in a day, or, 3 or 4 times in a week, he'd start looking at you like, what are you doing? You're sucking up. What do you want? Because the baby boomers are the people who they went to work, they got a paycheck, they did the work they were told to do, they did it the best they could, and then they go home. And when you say good job, you say it once, that's great. If you keep saying it to them, you sound like a suck up, because I'm going to do a good job because I've been doing it for 35 years. It's just their attitude. Now, you go to the newer generations. I like to call them the Nintendo generations, the ones that have played a lot of video games, the ones that have watched a lot of the new children's shows where it's constantly reinforcing. They get, every time they do something, they get a ding, 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 or a ta-da, or hooray, right? So these are the ones that they want to hear that good job all the time. And if you don't say good job, they think that you're just ignoring them. Good job, your way to go. I couldn't do this without you. You're a valuable team member. That reinforces that they know that they're doing the right thing, they're on the right track, they're getting the achievements that they should be getting. It's just been, trained into them from the way that they've experienced video games and TV shows growing up. If you don't do that, then they start feeling that they're underappreciated and they don't work as well, and they start becoming toxic because they're the kind of person that says, I can do anything. I'm the one that keeps this place together. Even though we all know there's no such thing as indispensable. But it's, like I said, these are just attitudes and experiences that I've found as I've been progressing. So you just really need to understand, and everybody's different. You might have a baby boomer that loves to hear that good job and they want to hear it all the time. You might have a Gen Xer or a millennial or Gen Z or whatever they're called, I can't remember now, that is, they don't want to hear that. They just want to be left alone to do their job, and they do a really good job. It depends on the person. But I'm just saying that you need to understand who you're talking to. Different cultures also, not just generations, but different cultures. I can't think of a specific one, but I'm sure people out there who are listening can think of one where if you said something to a culture about doing a good job, they might feel insulted. So it's always best to just know who you're talking to when you have those discussions, and make sure that you change the way that you talk with them to meet their expectations and be the best for them. So people who thrive on creativity, you need to have feedback that's full of energy and support, because people who are creative, they always look at what they've done and they always think it's not good enough. It's never good enough. It's, there's a problem there. I could have done that. I'm going to redo this. No, you want to have their feedback. No, this is great. I like it. Perfect. Great. That's awesome. I need you to do this now. That gives them a new tack to run on, a new goal, and they'll function better for it. So communication's super important. I could probably go on for another 10 minutes, but I don't want to go too long for this. I want to keep us fairly short. Trust and collaboration. This is one where things can fall apart. A leader and a manager need to lead by example. You need to be in there, depending on your industry. Some industries won't allow you to do that. If you're in a union shop, your manager might not be able to help you out with that. But he could always, on a site visit, when a manager shows up for a site visit, they're dressed in the appropriate clothes, they have the right safety equipment, they follow the rules, they come in, they check in with you, they do what they need to do, and then they go and leave you to do your job. That would be ideal. It all depends on your industry, but lead by example. Don't do one thing and say something else. And then that leads right into the transparency and honesty. Never lie to your team. If you can't tell them something, be it because it's proprietary, it's confidential, it's something that you're just not allowed to talk about at that point in time, but they maybe will be able to find out about later, tell them that. Most people will understand that. If you say, hey, I'd love to tell you, but I'm not allowed to talk about it just yet. As soon as I can, I will let you know. Most people, I'd say about 95% of them out there, would be satisfied with that, as long as you follow up, right? Don't ever black hole somebody. Don't close down an idea or suggestion. Always take the time, even if it's only if it's just a few minutes, review it with them. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know, or let me find out, or like I just said, I can't tell you just now, and give them a best effort for time and response, and then actually follow up. You must follow up. Even if it's like, if you say, oh, I might know next week, come back to them next week during that, that couple minute informal, like you're walking down the hallway as you're coming into work, like, oh, hey, Jeff, I remember we were talking about that. Yeah, I still haven't heard anything back. They'll know that you're not just forgetting about it. You're not just scraping it under a carpet and whatever. It's not important. No, that means that you are keeping their interests and their questions in the top of your mind all the time. The answer can never be just because when someone asks why. That is a toxic. It'll destroy a team as fast as can be when you start throwing those out. You need to qualify things. You can't just say just because. You can say, this is the way the business has decided to do it, and explain, if you know, why. Well, we had a problem in the past, and this is why we're doing it this way now. Or, this is the way we found that it has been the most efficient to do this. Now, if you have a better idea, let's go through it. See? You're not just saying just because. You're giving that team member, you're making them feel valid, and they're becoming a collaborator. So, trust is super important. If you don't have it, the whole thing falls apart. Accountability. Now, this is the part. I think I said earlier, accountability isn't always negative. It can be positive. So, when you set a clear expectation for everybody, their roles, their responsibilities, you've done regular check-ins with them, you encourage that peer-to-peer sort of collaboration and accountability. This is great. This is the easy stuff. You hold yourself and your team responsible for your actions and decisions. If you guys mess it up, you take responsibility, you take accountability, you fix the problem, you move on. That's just the way it is. You help establish an environment where everybody is dedicated to doing their best and helping others. The moment you start putting someone to the side, not including them in the team or anything like that. And by a team, I don't mean like social events. I mean in the team, in the meetings. No, you can't come to the meeting because you have to get this done. No, they need to come to the meeting. That's a whole part of being a high performance workforce, is you are part of the communication and part of the team. So, good deeds should always be acknowledged and announced. Goals that are met on or before when you expected to meet them should be acknowledged and announced. Goals that have been met after the fact should be acknowledged and announced, because they're still goals that have been met. Yeah, it may be 5 days late, but you know what? You can review that. Okay, yeah, we were 5 days late. We finished this, but the vendor was late. So we did a great job because we went and did this instead, and we got that done, and then we came back to this. There you go. Now you just turned something that was a negative to a positive. People respect someone who could admit they're wrong. You expect the responsibility. You correct your error, and then you move on. You don't need to bring things up again. No sense beating a dead horse. No one likes to hear their errors and mistakes brought up again and again and again. The only time that you ever bring something like that up is when it's a learning experience for everybody. Okay, so Fred made a mistake. You went in there, you talked it over with him. He went, yep, I made a mistake. I fixed it. I did this. And now you're moving on. Now, maybe that mistake was something because of inexperience, or it was just something that you'd never come across before. It's a good learning moment. And you can talk to Fred beforehand and say, or Frank, I can't remember who I used for a name there. Talk to that person beforehand and say, hey, would you like to speak at our next meeting about this issue that you came across and how you corrected it? If they say no, don't call them out for it. Just say someone had, or we had an issue. This is what happened. This is how it was corrected. So in the future, if you guys have this issue, now you know what we did to correct it, or you know how to avoid it completely. That's part of that communication. That's the only time you ever go back to someone's error or problem in the past. Otherwise, it's in the past. It's done. It's corrected. It's past. Move forward. That peer-to-peer accountability I was talking about, that's that mutual support. That's not people calling out other people for their mistakes or their errors. That's when someone makes a mistake and their coworker goes, oh, geez, you did that. I did that too. Hey, let's fix that right now. Or, no, don't do that. That'll break this. This is how you do it. That's that peer-to-peer accountability. That's what that means. It's part of that communication. It's being mutually supportive and responsible to each other. So, I've said diversity. Diversity is one of those ones that's really hard to make qualitative. Diversity is when you have people from a different culture or they come from a different place, they might have different ways of doing things. And that doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean that the way you're doing it's wrong. It just means they have a different way of doing it. And what you can do, and I don't have any specific instances of this, but I have read about where people have come from Europe or from Middle East or Far East or something like that, and the way they do something there in say, construction is slightly different than the way we do it here. And the company went, oh, that's a great idea. They checked the code. They went, well, there's no reason we can't do it this way. It's better than code, and it's cheaper, and it takes less labor. And so they convert and they change and they start doing that. Now that workforce is doing something that's more efficient. It makes them high performance. That's what I mean by diversity. It's also that thought process. Is it some people will think through problems differently. The only way I can really get any more clear on this is, if you're interested, go on YouTube and look up different ways of counting bills, money bills. Right? In North America, the way we do it is you put a stack in your hand and you start taking them off the stack one at a time with your thumb. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? But in other places, what they'll do is they'll fold it over and they start popping them out of the fold instead. There's like a whole bunch of different ways to count money. And that's just one example of different ways in different, like from diversity, will show you how to do the same thing. So, yeah. Part of that, talking about different ways, is that continuous learning and improvement. It's essential. You have stagnation. You need to have that so that you can have improvisation. You can have experimentation. You can have that development. You can have new skills come into your team. All those different things are super important. Creativity, adaptivity. Holy cow. Adaptability. There we go. It's important. Now, just because you have, I'm trying to think of a way to put this. An example, you have a training course. Only 3 of your people actually need this training course. However, the class has 5 seats. It's not going to cost you a bunch more to do it. Why not see if there are other team members who might be interested in that training, and slot them in. Now you have a little bit of succession. If one of those 3 people happens to not be available to do that kind of work in the future, you have alternates who have been trained. They may not be experienced, but they've been trained. So you're not going to be stuck waiting for someone to go through training to start them on that already. Now you can just slot another person in there. That's that pivoting. So provide those unexpected opportunities. Just giving somebody a little break from their regular duties can recharge them. It can make them revitalized. They'll come back and they'll have, maybe that training isn't necessarily so different from what they're doing. Now they have different ideas on what they could be doing right now. Maybe there's another way or another, if you're a software developer and you do you go and learn some different stuff, SQL, and now you come back from that and you go, oh geez, hey, SQL does it this way. I wonder if I can do that with what I'm doing. I'm not a programmer, so if that doesn't make sense, I just threw it out there. So that's why training is important. The final thing we're going to talk about here is results-oriented approach. We need to clearly define our goals. They have to be ambitious but attainable. So that's one of those ones that's like that's the manager, leader's sort of job. They have to pick what that goal is, where that goal is, how long it'll take us to get it, what we need to get to it. Make sure it's attainable. If you've set a goal that is not attainable, you're going to destroy your workforce. I don't mean you're going to hurt them, which is possible depending on what kind of industry you're in. You're going to wreck their morale. You're going to everyone, when they see something that's absolutely unattainable, but you're still saying we have to do this, they're just going to go like, well, whatever. And they're not going to work hard. They're going to just do what they do. They're going to be like, the work to resign people type thing. They just do their job and that's it. You don't have any of those high-powered people anymore because they know they're never going to make that goal. Provide recognition for individuals and team achievements. That could just be as simple as saying, hey, Julie and Francois over here, they hit their goal and they're moving on to the next section now. So, thank you for that. They did a good job. That might be all you need. Or maybe you're in an industry where your team really appreciate things like bringing lunch in for them once in a while when you're on track, under budget. You can say, hey, we're under budget. You know what? What is it? Does everyone want to have pizza, or do you want to let's go out for lunch, right? Or bring in something. Bring in a barbecue, and if you're on a industrial site where you can bring a barbecue in and do up your own burgers and hot dogs, maybe that's the type of recognition, right? You need to maintain that environment. People talk about work, life, and balance. So yeah, if your goals are so unattainable or ambitious that your team members are working and they're not getting that work-life balance. They don't have that time away from work to recharge. They don't have that time with their family. They're not getting weekends that they need to go and do things. They're not getting those afternoons that, hey, I need to take an afternoon off, boss. My kid has to go to the doctor, or he's got a recital I need to go to. It's important that you work those into your workflow, your team. They're going to happen. You could almost, depending on the type of industry you're in again, you could almost build that in to your project. I'm sure all the project managers out there will be nodding their heads right now. Oh yeah. There's a certain percentage that you're going to assume that this many people are going to be sick, or they're going to be unavailable, or they're going to be injured, or whatever your industry is. There are numbers for that. There's a value for that. Unfortunately, like I said, for being injured, we try to prevent that as much as possible, but it happens. Everyone needs to be aware of that. That work-life balance is important. But now, when I said that injury thing, you never compromise safety for results. Never. The moment, let's say you're on a site and you have a person there who needs to go up on height and they don't have their harness with them. But they're only going to go up there and grab one thing and then come back. No. Do not compromise safety for results. That is the time when that person will get hurt. And if you ask them to do that, you're telling them, one, it's okay for you to compromise your safety for results. Two, their safety doesn't mean as much as your results. and you'll start losing that confidence of your team. If your team can be confident in saying, this is unsafe, and I'm not going to do it until it's resolved or it's been dealt with, and they know that you as the leader and or manager will back them up on that within reason. Now, I don't know, depending on where you are. Here in Saskatchewan, you have your rights. I can't remember what they're called. They're your safety rights. Basically, you have the right to refuse work that you feel is dangerous. And there's a process that you go through. You contact your manager, your supervisor. You review what could be the incident or the unsafe condition, and so on and so on. There's a process for that, but you can't ever compromise safety for results. One of the other things that you have to be aware of for result-oriented approaches, you cannot get tunnel vision. This is the goal, and we're going to get it come hell or high water. You can't do that. You have to be able to change, pivot, I've said in the past. You need to get on that new tack, steer the ship. If you get tunnel vision and you're only working towards that single one goal, you're going to fail at so many other things because you're not watching everything else. So it's just, yeah, everything all comes together. You keep that balance between overpressurizing your workforce or having them underutilized. You like I said, you have a temporary change in work a team member does that can re-energize them. Always have low priority side jobs ready. Don't wait to find them when the demand for other work is low, because that way you can just pivot into that new stuff. There's lots. There's always work to do. Anybody out there who tells you they have nothing to do hasn't looked. I guarantee it. Any manager, any leader will tell you there is always stuff to do. Even if it is low value work, if someone has the time, it's still valued work. It's just not high value work. So you got someone, they finished their goal or they finished their specific thing they had to do that day. They can't start the next thing because some other part of the project isn't ready to go. They got a couple hours, say 4 or 5 hours. Give them some of that low priority work or that low value work. Or maybe that's the moment that they want to go to do their kids' recital. Or, maybe that's the moment you offer them, well, hey, do you want to take a half-day vacation? Always have that stuff ready. Now, how do you keep track of this stuff? How do you know if you're succeeding? Well, that's your measurables, your goals, your metrics, budgets, all that stuff. All the stuff that managers, that's the manager part. So you can keep track of how many of those low value or low value jobs you had set aside. Keep track of those, and you can say it. Say your monthly meeting. Say it's that when you have your regular meetings, it's once a month or once every 2 weeks. You can say, you know what? In the last 2 weeks, we only hit one goal. However, we got 7 ad hoc or low value tasks completed. That shows that you are moving forward and you are getting things done. Anybody worth their salt as a project manager or a leader will see that. They'll understand that, especially if it's explainable. The metrics, you'll hear these thrown around a lot. Key performance indicators, survey results. They're all the yucky things that the managers and the executives and everybody like to toss around. But that's really how you calculate and understand how well you're doing. Shift utilization. How many hours are people working if they're part-time? Overtime. Have you had to do any overtime? Customer satisfaction surveys. Those are another one that's super important in a lot of industries. There's different kinds of those. I can't remember what the industry standard is. NPS, Net Promoter Score. Yeah. That's those things where you have a person at your house, or you went to a business, or you purchased something, and then you get a card in the mail or an email or something like that, and it says, rate us on 1 to 10. That's what that is, that Net Promoter Score. It's just a rating on 1 to 10 on, say, 2 or 3 things. So, the person that was at your salesman or your technician, or the person that you were talking to, the quality of the work and the cost or whatever of the service, whatever they're looking to see what those indicators are. Those are kind of what they do. So, but yeah, that's really everything that I found. And I had to talk on it, and I've been going for quite a while here. I only had 15 minutes to go through all of that with my with my presentation, so I sort of rambled a little bit here. But I really hope that everybody had a chance to get a aha moment, or one of those things where you just go, "Oh, I never thought of it that way." And we're gonna try to get Fergal and Christian back together again with me for another one of our regular Nerdy Nerd News podcasts. Anyways, thanks everyone for listening, and I will talk to you later.